So coming up this weekend, we have a pay-per-view. It is going to be UFC 315. Belal Muhammad taking on Della Maddalena in the main event in front of a crowd again in Montreal, Canada. And I think it's going to be a good one. Now, I'm going to try and make this a pretty fast prediction video, like a shorter prediction video than I normally upload. But I'm going to have a long intro. So we're going to probably reach Angelo levels of intro here. But you're going to have to hear me out for a bit because I do have a bit to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is PFL Europe and PFL MENA are on this weekend. I'm not going to be covering PFL MENA, but I will cover PFL Europe. But I will do my upload like the day before the event. Of course, if you know me, I have exams. And I have an exam on Wednesday. I had an exam this morning for math, and it went really well. And I've got my final exam of the resits that I had to do on Wednesday. And then after that, I'm going to be free for a few weeks, which would be pretty awesome. But another thing that as well that did happen over the last week or so was my channel reached 9,000 subscribers. So thank you to everyone who watches the videos, likes the videos, comments the videos, has subscribed to the channel, of course, to reach that number. That's pretty awesome. Like I've been doing YouTube now for nearly 3.5 years. So that's, like that's a lot of videos. I think I've put 1,200 videos up on my channel. And I'll be honest, when I started, I never thought that I'd really even get to the point where I am right now. So I'm pretty happy with that number. However, of course, when you do reach a milestone like 9,000, you do have to look at the big number 10. And 10,000 would be pretty awesome. So hopefully we can reach that by the end of 2025. And another thing as well was I was kind of looking through like some of my older videos, and you guys are right in the comments. You guys let me know, which I do appreciate. Kind of like just kind of like talking about me, because I didn't realize that kind of low key, like me having this channel and having it for so long, I've kind of documented my life in a way on this channel. Like I'm 22 years old. I started that channel when I was 19. I just turned 19 years old. In fact, the first upload I ever did, I might have been 18 when I did that video. So I've kind of like, I don't know, in a weird way, like recorded myself throughout the years. And of course, you guys know I was very overweight. I've been overweight for most of the time that I've had this channel. And of course, recently in the last probably the 6 months or the year or so, I've lost a lot of weight. And I've never really been able to like notice it because like I look at myself in the mirror every single day. When that stuff kind of happens, you just don't really notice it, I don't think. But like, I didn't realize that how big I was 2 years ago, even, how much weight I really have lost. So that was quite cool to see as well, just kind of looking back on things. But yeah, 3 minute intro right now. We're not done. We're not done because you guys know I've got to mention it, of course. I will be putting up my PFL Europe article on the We Want Picks website. If you do sign up, it is $10 per month. If you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you do get 10% off your first membership. And you do just like greatly support my channel. Of course, I do get a commission from the We Want Picks team, but I also do believe in the We Want Picks product. It's something that I have used myself. You guys know that I was gambling like an absolute madman on the UFC throughout the start of the year, but I've taken a bit of a break now for these exams. You can use those tools, their website, to make your own bets, as well as you can just kind of copy and tail Angelo and Jacob's bets and bet Sam's as well, but definitely always check on with your own stuff too. I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk about. Poster review. Did I remember to do a poster review last weekend? I don't think I did. I like this one. There is some posters coming up that I think are absolutely terrible, and I will be honest, I know absolutely nothing about the flags of Canada. I'm going to guess that this is like a reference to like the area flag, like maybe the Montreal flag, the Quebec flag. I don't know. It looks good, I think. You know what I mean? Like it's basic, it's very basic, but I think it's good, and I think it looks good. So with that intro out of the way, let's now get into the fights. The first fight of the night is of course Daniel Santos taking on Jeong Lee, and in classic Artem MMA fashion, I haven't got my fightodds.io open, so we're going to be pulling that up right now to get ready for this one. Now Daniel Santos is the favorite in this matchup, -140. Jeong Lee's the underdog, and I am going to be picking Jeong Lee as the underdog in this fight. Now I thought that Jeong Lee was going to beat Gavin Tucker. I thought he was going to get a finish over Gavin Tucker. And I think this is a much more difficult matchup. In my opinion, it's actually like overall as a fight, a much more fun matchup. Daniel Santos, he's a Charles Oliveira minion. Jeong Lee is a Korean zombie minion, I think is what I'm going to start calling these guys out of South Korea that just genuinely are trying to become the next TKZ, because there are so many guys. Like, I could name probably off the top of my head only two, but genuinely, there's probably 3 or 4 South Korean fighters out there right now trying to be the next TKZ. Han Seol Kim is one of them, just a total punching bag. And Jeong Lee, I didn't consider that he was one until he just went out there against Hyder O'Mill and decided to stand and bang. You know, he did get beaten up in that fight a lot, but hey, at least he come out there trying to fight for the people, you know, and him versus Trevor Peak would have been unbelievable. But Daniel Santos is a former bantamweight, well, he is a bantamweight. Coming in on short notice here. And Daniel Santos, he's got that classic Muay Thai style that the shooter box guys do have. He's got solid grappling as well, but I genuinely believe in this matchup, you know, I think the size is going to be a real factor. You know, Jeong Lee, very, very dangerous on the feet, but especially on the ground. He has been inactive throughout his career, but once he won that Road to UFC tournament, I thought he looked pretty good on there. And I think that Jeong Lee, I think he can present some danger on the feet. I think he can present some danger on the ground. I know Blake Builder's not really like the best win to have on your record, but he dominated Blake Builder everywhere, man. Like, he was out wrestling Blake Builder. Builder's a pretty solid wrestler himself, you know. Like, I think that kind of overall Jeong Lee is gonna be more dangerous. Now I guess you could say that's a bit ironic given the fact that Santos is from shooter box, but that's just how I see the fight personally. I think I see the bigger guy with the power and also the submission ability. We've seen this showcased before against well, he beat Yijia, but he also beat, where's his name, Bin, who's a very talented fighter as well. So yeah, I think that Jeong Lee can get a finish in this fight. Now, Modestas Bukauskas fights against Yeong Cutelaba. Stylistically similar to Yeong Cutelaba's last win, which he got a first round submission win in. Which is pretty awesome for Yeong Cutelaba, I'll be honest, because this guy, I feel like at one point we're looking at maybe the end of his UFC run. He was on a little bit of a losing streak, but he's been able to come back recently. And I actually quite distinctly remember picking Tanner Boser to beat Yeong Cutelaba when he was on this losing streak. And he proved me wrong. He's proven a lot of people wrong. And he's looked good in his last couple of outings. Yeong Cutelaba, though, we know him not really for the grappler that he is. Now, he does wrestle, but most of the time he's just an all-out machine with the striking on the feet. Very dangerous in round 1. And he does typically seem to slow down a bit going on into round 2 and 3. Modestas Bukauskas, we know him as a pretty technical kickboxer. 78-inch reach at 205 pounds is pretty respectable, and he does stand at 6'1". This is a matchup which I do believe Bukauskas is the more technical striker, and I think if anyone's going to win the minutes, especially outside of the first round, it would be Modestas Bukauskas. Now, I do think now that I say it out loud, potentially that Yeong Cutelaba's got nothing in the tank after round 1 take is getting a little bit outdated because he's proven to push pretty hard. He did that against Erslan, who's also fighting on this card. But you know what I mean. Like, Yeong Cutelaba's not known for fantastic cardio. Bukauskas has proven time and time again he can go 15 minutes. And I think that this fight does go 15 minutes. I think we see Bukauskas win a decision. Bukauskas is good at keeping the fight standing, and I think that the more technical striker in this matchup is going to prevail. I'm going to go with Bukauskas to kind of just be like a better version of even Erslan, I guess you could say. So I'm picking Modestas Bukauskas by decision there. Now, speaking of Ivan Erslan, we have him taking on Navajo Stirling. You guys know I'm a big fan of Navajo Stirling. I've been following Navajo Stirling throughout his MMA career since he was 2-0. So this is when he beat Kevin Fittiel with that big takedown slam in the big 2023. And there is a chance that Navajo, or someone that knows Navajo, could be watching this video. He does follow me on Instagram, which is one of my greatest flexes, I'll be honest. So shout out to Navajo. I will be honest though, genuinely, I think that this is a pretty tricky matchup for him. Even Erslan is a big step up in competition for Navajo, in my opinion, not only from the Contender Series, but also from his UFC debut as well, because even Erslan is a guy with a lot of experience under the bright lights. Now, Navajo Stirling, of course, a former kickboxing world champion. He's been there, he's done that too, but even Erslan fought for KSW, one of the biggest promotions in the world. Got a couple of highlights for them. I mean, Bogdan Gniko, at one point, I believe, was a very good undefeated prospect. If I've got him correctly, I do. Yes, I do, because I do remember breaking down, I believe it was his KSW debut, way back in the day when I first got signed to We Want Picks and started writing articles about KSW for them. But anyway, man, this 9K subscriber special, I guess, has started to become a bit of a walk down memory lane, I guess. But Navajo Stirling, he is the pick. He's very good. He does exactly what you would expect him to do. He's a city kickboxing guy. He's a Carlos Ulberg type fighter. I do think in his last fight he did disappoint somewhat in the fact that he just wasn't really aggressive enough to get the finish, but I do think that comes down to quite a few things, and he even said this in his post-fight interview. He said, you know, I've only had 5 professional fights, and he'd never been the distance, so he went the distance in the UFC against Tuko Tokos, who isn't the most dangerous guy on the feet, but I guess does have a similar sort of come forward pressure sort of boxing style that Erslan has. It's a striker versus striker matchup. We're not going to see Erslan take this fight down to the ground. I don't think we're going to see Stirling take this fight down to the ground. I think this is very similar to his win over Philip Latu here, where he's taking on a boxer that's a little bit shorter than him, that's got a shorter reach than him. Erslan's going to be aggressive. He's going to look for that KO. But I am going to pick Navajo Stirling in this matchup. But I will be honest, I'm not like as confident as a lot of people, because I know that Navajo Stirling is Betsam's Slam of the week. But Betsam loves Navajo, and I think he's probably a bit closer with Navajo than I am. But yeah, shout out to Navajo Stirling. Shout out to his Twitch as well. He streams Rainbow Six Siege on Twitch. If you're interested in that game, check out Navajo's Twitch, where he does pretty regular live streams. Jessica Andrade now fights against Jasmine Jasudavicius. This is the second leg of Betsam's Slam. I apologize for stealing Betsam's Slam and posting it on here, Betsam, but you know, if you wanted to tail a little parlay, that's what Betsam's cooked up anyway. But Jasmine Jasudavicius is the pick to beat Andrade. Genuinely, I think there's going to be a massive size difference in between these two ladies. Jasmine Jasudavicius, I consider to be a pretty big fighter at 125 pounds. We know that she's very strong, she's very athletic, and despite the striking really getting exposed by Tracy Cortez, it has actually gotten so much better in her last few fights. It's very impressive. She just beat Mayra Bueno Silva. She's taking on Andrade here, who is, of course, I feel like at this point, like underrated, maybe underappreciated. You know, Andrade is a former champion, and she does fight anyone, anywhere. She kind of is like this. Oh, this kind of sounds so disrespectful, but you got to hear me out. It's coming from a good place. She's like the Neil Magny of the women's divisions. You know, like Neil Magny. I think a lot of people kind of disrespect Magny, but Magny will fight anyone, man. Like, you name any undefeated up-and-coming prospect, even Mike Malott, who obviously had a loss on his record, but still, like, Magny still fights anyone. Andrade kind of does that too, except at the top of the rankings. But Andrade, former champion, very dangerous still on the feet. She does have KO power, but I think that, honestly, Jasmine Jasudavicius, using that Canadian National Wrestling Championship background, we're going to see her be able to do that against Andrade. If she beats Andrade, I think she's one fight away from the title shot. Maybe a rematch with Tracy Cortez could be the option, potentially. I don't really know how big Jasudavicius' star power really goes, but, like, could she maybe headline an event in Canada? I don't know. Maybe against Cortez. I mean, they did Cortez versus, was it Namajunas? That was in the US. But anyway, Jasudavicius by decision's the pick. This video is not going as fast as I thought it would, but that's fine. That's all good. Just a little bit more time to delay the inevitable, which is the study. Mike Malott, he's come back after his big loss to Neil Magny. He did get the big win recently, and the name of course, slipped my mind. I apologize. I didn't get that much sleep last night. Trevin Giles. Good win to have for Malott, because he was able to showcase everything there. We know Malott as the grappler. He is or at least he was, when he fought on the Contender Series, the grappling coach at Team Alpha Male, which is a big reason why I picked him to submit Szymon Smatryski. And, of course, we also learned recently that the striking has really gotten a bit better, because against another name that has slipped my mind, I apologize, Adam Fugit, you watch this fight on the feet, Mike Malott is a step ahead of him every single way, and he just completely outclassed him there. Big win for Malott too. Malott's cardio is going to be a concern after the loss to Magny. I think it always will be. But in this matchup against Radtke, genuinely, I do still rate Malott's striking high enough to be able to beat Radtke in the minutes on the feet. It's just going to kind of come down to the grappling, because Radtke, we know, can get pretty solid takedowns, and he can get some pretty solid control. And I do think that in this matchup, it's just going to come down to, like, can Mike Malott either keep the fight on the feet and get his own takedowns to get on top, Or if he does get taken down, you know, can he throw up submissions, potentially maybe try and win some minutes off his back? I mean, I know that judging doesn't necessarily go that way really anymore, but, you know, JJ Wilson was able to do it in Bellator against another Russian guy whose name has slipped my mind. It's not a good day for me, guys. I'm picking Mike Malott. My decision. We'll move on. Let's go. Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Bruno Silva. Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised Bruno Silva is still in the UFC, but part of me is also pretty glad because I do think that at the end of the day, they gave this guy some of the toughest matchups you could possibly get. It started with a loss to Brendan Allen, who's in the top 10 now. Started with a loss to Sharaputin Magomedov, who's a very good prospect. Went on to win quite a few fights after that. You know, Chris Weidman tried to kill him. I don't really know how else to say it, to be honest. And then Ismail Nadeyev. Turns out Ismail Nadeyev is a lot better than I thought he was. And of course, that's Nadeyev's second run in the UFC. Marc-Andre Barriault, I think, does beat Bruno Silva, though. Silva is like a kind of guy that at one point, I was actually quite high on him. I really thought that he could become something. He had that pretty competitive matchup against Alex Pereira. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend you watch it. It's a good fight. And Pereira has to deal with a bit of adversity there, which we haven't really seen from Pereira. Aside from obviously the Ankalaev fight and then just other championship fights. You know what I mean. And then aside from that, just knocks everyone out. The thing about Marc-Andre Barriault, though, despite having a lot of KO losses recently, Barriault's a very tough guy, and he's gonna do the same thing every time, and that's pressure. He's gonna come forward, he's gonna look for takedowns, he's gonna look for the clinch, and to be honest, he's been getting caught trying to do that recently because his striking defense has never really been fantastic. But one thing I can guarantee you that Barriault's going to try and do, it's just going to be close to distance. It's going to be clinch. If anyone's going to be stronger in the clinch here, it's going to be Marc-Andre Barriault. If anyone's going to be able to get the takedowns, it's going to be Marc-Andre Barriault. Bruno Silva's wrestling we know is a big weakness in his game, and I think that Barriault can exploit that. But honestly, combined losing streak of 7 fights right now. TKO losses as well for Barriault to Dustin Stoltzfus, Joe Pyfer, and a split decision loss to Chris Curtis. But TKO losses on both sides here. These better fights to bet on, guys. There just really is. But I'm gonna pick Barriault. He's gonna win the minutes in the clinch. He's gonna use that strength that he does have. He's a pretty big fella for 185. And now Brad Katona fights against Bekzat Almakhan. And this might be where the takes get a little bit spicy because I'm gonna pick Brad Katona to beat Bekzat Almakhan. Now, here's the crazy thing about Bekzat Almakhan, because I do not want there to be a little bit of misinformation out there about him. He didn't have a fake record also, because he was signed to the UFC, I think it's like 17-1 or something like that, and then when he fought against Umar, they changed it to 11-1. So many fighters from Kazakhstan, because I believe that Jekpujek's like their national sport or something, have these Jekpujek fights on their records, and Jekpujek is like MMA, except like there's a timer on the ground, so you can't like be grappling for too long. It's kind of like, honestly, probably more fun to watch kind of MMA if you're into striking more than anything else. So yeah, shout out to Jekpujek. But if you included Bekzat Almakhan's Jekpujek record, he would be 25-1, but they took that out because Jekpujek, you know, it's not MMA, so it's 11-1, 11-2 now, of course, with the loss to Umar, and he rocked Umar, he dropped Umar. But the thing about Bekzat Almakhan is, despite this guy being amazing on the feet and amazing in the striking, the takedown defense is still a worry for me. And I know Brad Katona is the most boring fighter on the planet right now. He's going to make it boring. That's what he's going to do. He's going to get the takedowns on Bekzat Almakhan, in my opinion. He's going to avoid getting knocked out cold. And I think he's just going to kind of beat Bekzat Almakhan the same way Umar Nurmagomedov was able to. Now, you could definitely make the argument that Umar performance was on short notice. Almakhan did come in on short notice for that. And we've seen Umar break Corey Sandhagen, who just looked so good against Figgy. So if you wanted to MMA math this out, like, I totally understand it. But just kind of based on what I've seen, I do think that Almakhan can get taken down. It's looked good. It has looked good on the regional scene. There's a lot of videos on this guy. If you've got UFC Fight Pass, you can watch these ones. But Brad Katona, he's going to make it boring. He's going to come forward. He's going to look for takedowns. And the thing about Katona that you can't take away from him is he's got such good cardio. Like, he can push a hard 3 rounds despite being absolutely massive for the weight class. I'm going to pick Katona to get this one done here. I think he wins decision. Everyone's on Almakhan. except for me, let's go with Brady Katona as an underdog before we get into the main card. And I always kind of say in my videos, you know, there's always kind of like one fight on the card that everyone talks about, whether it's a prelim or the co-main event. Like last week it was Bo Nickel versus RDR, and Bo Nickel got smoked, man. I can't believe that result, you know. I think a lot of people can't believe that result, but I mean, I could have seen RDR submitting him, you know, but I couldn't see RDR knocking him out after watching him fight GM3. Like, there is just no evidence out there that Reina Dorita could have knocked out Bo Nickel on the feet. Like, that's unbelievable. But anyway, Jose Aldo versus Aiemann Zahabi. This is the fight that everyone's talking about. And as they should be. This is Jose Aldo. I love Jose Aldo. You guys know that Jose Aldo, I vouch for Aldo so many times. A lot of people like would disagree with me. I still strongly believe in what I say when I say that Jose Aldo fighting at 135 pounds, win or lose, is adding to his legacy. This is a guy that became the champion at 145 pounds, defended the belt off the top of my head like 8 times, unbelievable amount of times. 8 times, look at that. MMA knowledge is not that bad, I guess, after all. Anyway, maybe it's 7 times and I'm just lying. 7 times! Oh, ignore me, but I guess technically he got it again against Sega. Ignore that. He's come down a weight class, and he's been beating ranked guys at the age of 39 years old, and some people argue potentially because he doesn't have a birth certificate, Aldo could be older than 39 years old, you know what I mean? And that's just kind of like what Aldo does, you know. This guy he's genuinely an ageless wonder, and I really hope that the age doesn't start to show on this matchup, in particular, because I think it's a good one for Aldo to get a win back after the absolute stain to his legacy. Absolute stain to his legacy. That was the last matchup that I will refuse to talk about. But in that matchup, Aldo was scrapping it out. He was getting the better of the boxing combinations. He made a young, in his prime, bantamweight fighter just shame himself and everyone else in that matchup. And Jose Aldo, you know, he just kind of showed that he's still got that boxing, you know what I mean? He's still got it going for him. And he can come forward, he can throw the nice little boxing combinations. Aldo's takedown defense is still pretty unmatched as well. I mean, old mate couldn't take him down. Marab couldn't really take him down. In fact, he couldn't take him down. Zahabi, you know, the thing about Zahabi is, apparently he's going to have George St. Pierre in his corner, so he's going to get the crowd pop. Like, that's all cool and all, yeah. But it's Jose Aldo. It's Jose Aldo. Zahabi, it's Jose Aldo. I think it's going to be a striking matchup. I think Aldo's going to be able to defend any takedowns that Zahabi tries. Not that, like, that's Zahabi's game. Zahabi is a pretty talented striker with a lot of power. But I think that Aldo's going to be the one pressuring forward. And once those combos get going, man, like, genuinely, old man Aldo's still got those eyes in the pocket. Like, it's pretty nuts, the stuff that he can land on the inside. So I'm going to vouch for Aldo here. I believe in Aldo. I know there's a lot of people out there that disagree. There's a lot of people out there with money on Aiemann Zahabi. Not me. Shout out to Aldo, man. I like Aldo. Genuinely, I do think Aldo wins, by the way. Like, I know that was just an Aldo glaze session, but I think Aldo does win this matchup. That's right. 4-fight main card right now. Benoit Saint Denis is potentially going to have another matchup. It could be many different people. I've heard a name from Poland that's not Mateusz Gamrot, if that gives you a hint that it could be, but I could be wrong. I'm not going to put that out there because I could be wrong. Anyway, Natalia Silva fights Alexa Grasso. I think this is going to be a striking fight. The thing about Silva that I do tend to bring up all the time is that she is very small for this weight class. She's coming off 2 fantastic performances, though, against Viviane Araujo, who actually fought against Grasso, of course, and then also against Andrade. Silva has just got really good kickboxing. There's not really much else to say, really. Like, the fact that she's able to just strike so cleanly in a, I guess, like, area of MMA where just nobody knows how to strike is quite impressive to me. And Alexa Grasso is one of those fighters as well that has very solid boxing, but I think that Silva's just better. Like, I genuinely think that in the striking, Silva is the better striker. And I don't think that's a hot take to say. She's minus 200. I think most people are picking... Most people are picking Grasso. Okay, fair enough, I guess. But, like, genuinely, I think Silva is going to throw so much more volume in this matchup than Alexa Grasso. And she's going to land it, too. I think this fight goes all 3 rounds. I don't think there's a chance of a finish on either side. Grasso has found some success mixing in takedowns, of course, in the trilogy with Valentina Shevchenko, but for the most part, in that trilogy, it was actually Grasso getting the better of the striking. But I think that Silva, you know, she's just proven herself so much now that she can beat this high level of competition. I think that she can beat Alexa Grasso, and I think if she beats Alexa Grasso, it's going to be very obviously her versus the winner of this fight, which I'm going to predict to be Manon Fiorot. And I think these odds are wrong, are they not? I thought Manon Fiorot was the favorite. Yeah. Manon Fiorot right now is a minus 160 favorite. Valentina Shevchenko is plus 140. And I'll be honest, I'm surprised. You know, I am picking Manon Fiorot to win this fight, but I didn't think that I was going to be picking Manon Fiorot as a nearly 2-1 favorite to defeat Valentina Shevchenko. But it just comes down to one thing for me, man. Like, I picked Valentina Shevchenko, by the way, to beat Alexa Grasso in all 3 fights. I picked her to win the fight which she lost, which she was a massive favorite, and then I picked her to win the fight that was the draw, which I think you should score to Shev, but you know, that's what it is. And then the fight that was originally the final fight, which was the win over Alexa Grasso. And in those fights, the way that Shevchenko had to resort to win that fight was with her wrestling and her grappling. We have seen Shevchenko potentially with age, potentially with contentment, because she's just dominated 125 for her entire career pretty much. You know, of course she had to fight at 135 originally, and then they brought in 125, and then Nico Montano wasted a year of her career, and then here we are. But anyway, Shevchenko, she's 37 years old now. We started to see Alexa Grasso, you know, beat her on the feet, so Shevchenko needed to use the wrestling on the feet. But here's the problem with this one. Manon Fiorot, I believe, has proven to have good enough takedown defense to deal with Shevchenko's takedown offense. And another thing as well that I think Manon Fiorot brings to the table that a lot of Shevchenko's recent opponents haven't really brought to the table is the size. Shevchenko is a big fighter at 125 pounds. We just saw her beat the piss out of Erin Blanchfield, which is a nightmare matchup stylistically for Manon Fiorot because she's a striker, and she's a very good striker at that. And I think that genuinely, kind of just based on the fact that we saw Alexa Grasso beating Shevchenko on the feet, me still picking Shevchenko to beat Grasso in all 3 of those matchups too, by the way. Manon Fiorot, you want to MMA soup this one out? I think Manon Fiorot can actually beat Valentina Shevchenko in this fight over 25 minutes on the feet. I think that she's going to be the pressure forward fighter. We've seen it. We saw it with Grasso. I think, like, very clearly in the second fight, despite me thinking that Shevchenko won it, Grasso finding the success with the pressure. Manon Fiorot is a pressure sort of striker, man. Like, she's going to come forward, she's going to throw volume, she's going to hit hard as well. She's big for 125, and I think that this is potentially one of the better strikers, aside from Grasso, that Shevchenko has had to fight in her career. Technical strikers, I should say. Just to fully clarify that one there. But I think Manon Fiorot gets it done. Maybe you like Shevchenko as the underdog. I mean, right now, BetOnline has her listed at 141. That's 2.4 times your money. Like, that's not bad. But I'm picking Manon Fiorot in this fight. I'm just surprised that she's such a big favorite. But I do think that she gets it done. And now, Jack Della Maddalena. He's fighting for the title. Oh, amazing. Yeah, he's going to win. I genuinely believe this. Now, I just know what my comment section is going to look like. I know what it's going to look like. When this fight was announced, the first thing I thought was Jack Della Maddalena wins. This isn't just something that I've kind of come up with and then, you know, like, I've always believed that JDM was going to win this matchup. I think that JDM is a bad matchup for Belal Muhammad. I think you can make an argument that Belal Muhammad is a bad matchup for JDM. But there's something different that JDM does that Leon Edwards doesn't. JDM is going to bring the fight to Belal. Leon Edwards, from the start of that fight, from the first minute of that fight, I'll be honest, I realized I made the wrong pick. I'll be honest, I quite distinctly remember actually watching that fight because I actually watched it at university. I think I was studying for an exam or something at that time, and it was sad, you know. It was a bit pathetic, I'll be honest, really. Kind of like from my end, you know, not really taking too much full attention to the matchup when it was happening live, and then also just kind of the fight as well. I thought the fight wasn't very fun. I still don't think the fight was very fun. I guess, like, Belal he just dominated Edwards, man. Like, Edwards, the thing about Leon Edwards is, and although Fabian Edwards just knocked out Impa Kasanganai, by the way, if you guys didn't know, I also think Fabian Edwards is a bit the same. They just don't really bring the fight to their opponent. They can get pressured back easily and get taken down. And that's what Leon Edwards just allowed himself to do. Leon Edwards made no adjustments in the fight to stop that from happening. Jack Della Maddalena is not going to let Belal Muhammad just walk him down. He's not going to allow that to happen. Jack Della Maddalena is going to stand his base in the center of that octagon. He's going to throw his boxing combinations, and he's going to land those boxing combinations. And I do believe, finally, we can see my point proven that Belal Muhammad is not as good of a striker as everyone is making him out to be. Because my goodness, as this take looked absolutely horrid. Because he beat a one-armed Gilbert Burns who fought him on short notice. And then he beat Leon Edwards, and Edwards just quits. He just faded away. He just didn't let anything happen. JDM. Yes, his takedown defense has looked a bit bad, because it has. It's not looked good against Gilbert Burns. It's not looked great. I mean, Basil Hafez fight is what it is, because let's be honest, Basil Hafez has not looked the same since then, and we all kind of know why that was. But the thing is as well with that matchup, like, you look at the stats of that fight, that was just JDM pulling guillotines. Like, JDM, like, he was just an idiot in that fight. He had to cut weight 3 times in 2 weeks as well. Like, you know, we've seen what that did to Chris Duncan. When he fought Vyacheslav Borchev in the Contender Series in 2022, I think it was. We've even seen what happened when Diego Lopez had to cut weight 3 times when he fought against Dan Ige. We got a drained version of Lopez. He didn't look very good. JDM had to do that when he fought against Basil Hafez, and Hafez hasn't looked like the same guy since. That's all I'll say about that one. But JDM, he just beat Burns. I thought he looked good against Burns. A lot of people think he didn't look good against Burns, but my response to that is he broke his arm early in that matchup, and then proceeded to TKO Burns anyway, which is pretty cool. And another thing as well about that matchup too is he showed that he can dig deep even with a broken arm. And another thing as well about that matchup was over a year ago. And JDM, yes, he had, I believe, more than one infection in the recovery process, which is definitely a bit of a red flag. But the problem is, JDM's not coming back after 6 months. JDM's coming back after over a year for this one here against Belal Muhammad. And honestly, I just think that, like, I look at this matchup, I genuinely think this is a good matchup for JDM. I think JDM gets it done. I'm excited for it. I'm more excited for this fight than, I will be honest, I think I'm more excited for this fight than maybe any other fight that we've had this year. Is that sad to say? Is that how bad the UFC has regressed in the last 36 months? Yeah, probably. I will be honest. Yeah, but I think that this is it. This is it for me. You know, this is my high. Like, this is as good as it's gonna get, because we know UFC 317 is gonna suck. This is my UFC 300 that I never got. This is it. This is it for me. I'm picking Jack Della Maddalena, and I'm picking Jack Della Maddalena by knockout in the first 3 rounds. Let's go. Belal Muhammad's going to look good for moments, though. He's going to get his takedowns, but as long as JDM just doesn't quit on himself, as long as JDM comes forward and he throws the volume that Leon Edwards refused to do, Jack Della Maddalena doesn't rely on his kicks. He's a boxer. He's going to come forward. He's going to let the hands fly. He won't disappoint us. We will become champion this weekend. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.